All right, diving in. I was so excited to get to this one. This interview with Robert Greene from the JayShettyPodcast. I just think there's so much to unpack when it comes to Greene's ideas on self-character creative growth. It's a lot.
Yeah, and it's a long conversation, so much to cover. It's going to be fun kind of sifting through it all and figuring out what's really going to be valuable for everyone listening?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that really jumped out at me right away was Greene's focus on character.
Mhm.
He's really big on judging people based on character, not just charm or outward success.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to get caught up in first impressions, right? Like someone's charisma or their achievements, but Green's saying, hey, look deeper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He even says, and I'm quoting here, the most important thing is to look beyond charm and focus on how people handle the darker aspects of life, their reaction to stress, criticism, and even their use of power.
Ooh, that's good. I like that quote. It's like a little litmus test, right?
Yeah.
How do people act when things get tough,
Yeah.
when they're under pressure?
Right. He gave some really specific examples, too, like how someone responds to criticism.
Oh, yeah. Like, do they get defensive or do they actually listen and try to learn from it? You can tell a lot about a person by how they handle feedback.
Totally. And he talked about how they react under pressure, too.
Hmm.
Do they stay calm and collected,
Mhm.
or do they completely lose it?
Yeah, that's a big one. Are they resourceful? Can they think on their feet? Or do they just crumble when things get tough?
Yeah. It's almost like a stress test for their personality. And then he also talked about how someone uses power. That's a huge indicator of character, especially in a work setting.
Absolutely. Think about the best and worst bosses you've ever had. The ones who use their power to help others grow versus the ones who just like to throw their weight around.
Right. It's so telling. And you know what else really struck me? Greene was really honest about his own struggles. Like he talked about feeling this emptiness inside, maybe stemming from his childhood. And he even admitted to being drawn to people who might try to fill that void, even if it wasn't healthy.
Yeah, that was really powerful. I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling. Even Jay Shetty said it resonated with him.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like a reminder that everyone has vulnerabilities, even successful authors and thought leaders.
Exactly. No one's perfect. And it ties back to Greene's concept of lifetime versus dead time.
Yeah.
We have to actively create meaning in our lives, not just passively wait for it to happen.
I've always struggled with meditation, but hearing Greene talk about emptiness as a positive thing, a path to growth, it's making me want to approach it differently.
Right. It's kind of paradox, isn't it? Like this emptiness that we usually try to avoid could actually be a source of power if we learn to embrace it.
Right. It's like in Zen Buddhism where they talk about egolessness.
Hmm.
Letting go of the ego can actually lead to a greater sense of peace and enlightenment.
Exactly. And this connects to another point Greene makes, the importance of questioning your beliefs.
Ooh, yeah. Especially those beliefs we've inherited from our upbringing or our culture. That's where it gets really interesting for me.
Because those beliefs can be so ingrained, right? We don't even realize we're holding on to them. Sometimes they're not even serving us anymore.
Exactly. It's like Greene saying, hey, step back and take a look.
Mm,
Are these beliefs actually helping me? Or are they holding me back?
totally. And Jay Shetty brought up this concept of thought editing, which he practices. It's like actively challenging and reframing your thoughts.
Okay, yeah. I'm intrigued. I've never
Yeah.
really explored that, but it sounds like a practical way to put this into action.
Right. It's about breaking free from those limiting beliefs that might be holding you back in all areas of your life. Your relationships, your career, your creativity.
I love it. Okay, so we're talking about judging people based on character, being aware of our own vulnerabilities and questioning our beliefs.
Mhm.
What else stood out to you in this first part of the conversation?
Well, one thing that really struck me was Greene's fascination with ancient cultures.
Oh, yeah. He specifically mentioned daily life in ancient Babylonia and Aztec philosophy. What's that all about?
I think he's drawn to these cultures because they had such different ways of seeing the world. I think that can be really valuable for us today, to step outside of our modern worldview and see things from a different perspective.
That's so true. It's like broadening your horizons, right?
Yeah.
Like traveling to a new country and experiencing a whole different way of life.
Exactly. And it can challenge our assumptions about how things should be. Maybe there are other ways of living and thinking that we haven't even considered.
I love that. So we're talking about expanding our understanding of the world and ourselves through exploring different cultures.
Mm.
That's pretty powerful.
It is. And it all ties back to Greene's overall message of living a more intentional and meaningful life. Questioning our beliefs, seeking out new experiences, and ultimately becoming the best versions of ourselves.
Okay, so we've got a lot to unpack here. We're looking at character vulnerabilities, beliefs, and now ancient cultures. I'm excited to keep digging in.
Me too.
Yeah,
Let's see what other gems we can uncover in this conversation with Robert Greene.
sounds good. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back with more from the deep dive.
You know, it's funny, he specifically mentioned these ancient cultures that seem to have a totally different relationship with time and sensory experience than we do today.
Yeah, like he talked about how in ancient Greece, there weren't all the distractions we have now, cars,
Mm.
planes, advertising. It was just nature. The
Right.
sounds of the wind, the smell of the earth.
Right. And it makes you wonder, what are we missing out on with our constant plugged-in lifestyle? Are our
Right.
senses even as sharp as they used to be?
It's kind of crazy to think about, right? Like how much of our day is spent staring at a screen,
Yeah.
passively taking in information.
Instead of actively experiencing the world around us using all of our senses.
Totally. It's like we've traded depth of experience for just like a wider range of information.
Exactly. And it's worth asking ourselves, is that really a good trade-off? You know?
It really makes you think. And it brings us back to Greene's idea of a lifetime, right? Like, are we using technology to actually enhance our lives, or is it just filling a void?
Hmm. That's a good question. Something to ponder for sure. And, you know, another thing that surprised me, Greene talked about struggling with imposter syndrome when people call him a self-help guru.
Yeah, that was interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because clearly he's had a huge impact on so many people's lives.
I think he just finds more fulfillment in pursuing creative projects that feel authentic to him, you know, even if they don't fit neatly into a box.
Yeah, he seems to really value that authenticity. And Jay Shetty really connected with that too.
Yeah.
They both emphasize that true creativity comes from exploring ideas that feel alive and relevant to you personally.
Totally. Even if those ideas don't meet other people's expectations.
Exactly. It's about trusting your own intuition, your own inner voice, even if it leads you down a less conventional path.
And it all comes back to questioning those ingrained beliefs again, right? Like, what if those beliefs are actually holding you back creatively?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
What if we could break free from those limitations and tap into a whole new level of creativity? It's kind of mind-blowing.
Right. And Greene talked about how important it is to connect with something larger than yourself, whether that's through creative pursuits, exploring different cultures, or even just spending time in nature.
Yeah, he talked about those moments where you feel a sense of awe or wonder, like a connection to something that transcends your everyday reality.
Right. Like when you look up at the stars and you're just filled with this sense of awe and wonder.
Or, when you're hiking in the mountains and you feel so small, but also connected to something much bigger than yourself.
It's like tapping into a deeper source of inspiration and meaning, you know?
Totally. And it doesn't have to be some grand experience like that. It could be something as simple as listening to a piece of music that moves you or having a deep conversation with someone you care about.
It's about being open to those experiences, cultivating a sense of curiosity and wonder about the world around us.
And ultimately, it comes back to that idea of a lifetime again. Are we creating experiences that truly nourish us, that connect us to something bigger than ourselves?
I think that's a question we all need to ask ourselves more often. And, you know, another thing Greene and Shetty talked about was the importance of paying attention to our sensory experiences.
Oh, yeah. He was talking about how our modern world can actually dull our senses.
Right. Like he contrasted the super sanitized and controlled environment of a modern city with the richness and rawness of the ancient world.
Yeah, imagine a world without constant advertising, traffic noise, artificial lights.
It's almost overwhelming to think about, right? But he argued that even though there were downsides to life back then, people's sensory worlds were much richer and more expansive.
It makes you wonder, how much are we missing out on by being constantly plugged in and bombarded with information?
Have we sacrificed the depth of our experiences for just having more knowledge?
Right. It makes me think about my own habits.
Yeah.
Do I actually spend enough time really experiencing the world around me? Using all my senses?
Or are we mostly just passively absorbing information through screens?
That's a great question. And again, it's not about ditching technology altogether. It's about finding a balance.
Being more mindful of how we're spending our time and energy.
And this reminds me of something else Greene mentioned. Learning new languages is a way to expand your thinking.
Oh yeah, he's fascinated by the Aztecs and how their worldview was so different from our own. He even mentioned reading an 800-page book on Aztec philosophy.
Wow, 800 pages. That's dedication. But I get it. It's about pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, exposing yourself to ideas and perspectives that are different from your own.
Exactly. It's like traveling to a new country and experiencing a whole different culture firsthand.
Totally. It's about cultivating curiosity and openness to new experiences.
And being willing to let go of the idea that your way of seeing the world is the only way or even the best way.
It's about humility, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing that we all have something to learn from each other.
Exactly. And Shetty shared a great example of this from his own life. He talked about traveling to Bhutan, a country that's fiercely protective of its traditional culture.
Oh, yeah, I've heard amazing things about Bhutan. It's supposed to be so peaceful and beautiful.
He described it as a place where time seems to move slower, where there's a sense of peace and connection to nature that's rare in our modern world.
It's like stepping back in time, right? Seeing a different way of life that's not driven by the same values and priorities that we often take for granted.
It's not about romanticizing the past or rejecting modernity. It's about recognizing that there are many different ways of being in the world, different values, different priorities.
It's about expanding our understanding of what's possible and maybe even questioning some of the assumptions that we hold about how life should be lived.
And it connects back to Greene's thoughts on creativity. He believes that true creativity comes from exploring ideas that feel alive and personally relevant, even if they don't fit expectations or conventional wisdom.
Yeah, he was saying that he always tries to write about things that challenge him, that push him into new territory.
And he admitted that he often feels a sense of emptiness or uncertainty when he starts a new project, but that it's in that space of discomfort that true creativity emerges.
It's like you have to be willing to embrace the unknown to really tap into your creative potential.
Exactly. And he shared his process of continually questioning and revising his work, striving for a sense of authenticity and truth that resonates with readers.
He seems to really value that authenticity. Like he said, he hates the feeling of faking it.
Yeah.
He wants his writing to feel real and raw, even if it means exposing his own flaws and vulnerabilities.
And that vulnerability can be incredibly powerful, right? It allows others to connect with you on a deeper level.
Totally. It's not just about writing either. This applies to any creative pursuit, any area where you're putting yourself out there and expressing yourself authentically.
It seems to be a theme that runs throughout Greene's work and his conversation with Shetty. The importance of embracing imperfection both in ourselves and in others.
Letting go of the need to be perfect, to have all the answers, to present this polished and flawless image to the world.
It's about recognizing that our flaws and imperfections are part of what make us unique, part of what make us human.
And having the courage to be vulnerable, to show up as our authentic selves, even if it means risking judgment or rejection.
It's about accepting that the journey of self-discovery is ongoing, that there will always be challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt.
But it's in those moments when we're willing to face our fears and embrace the unknown that we truly grow and evolve.
And Greene and Shetty also talked about the importance of finding mentors and guides who can support you on your journey.
The power of books, the wisdom of ancient traditions, and the importance of surrounding yourself with people who inspire you to think differently and live more intentionally.
It's not just about finding mentors who are older or more experienced than you, though.
Right. It's about being open to learning from anyone who has something valuable to share, regardless of their age, background, or status.
It's about being a lifelong learner, always seeking out new knowledge, new perspectives, and new experiences that can enrich your understanding of yourself and the world.
You know, it's funny how so much of what they talked about boils down to this idea that life is a journey of continuous learning and growth.
It's not about reaching a final destination or achieving some kind of ultimate state of perfection.
It's about the process itself, the ongoing exploration of who you are and what you're capable of.
And finding joy and fulfillment in that journey, in the challenges and triumphs, in the moments of clarity, in the moments of confusion.
It's about embracing the messiness and complexity of life and recognizing that it's in those messy, complex spaces that true growth and transformation occur.
Yeah, it's like they're both saying, hey, embrace the messiness, be present in the journey. Don't get so caught up in striving for some perfect end goal that you miss out on the beauty of right now.
And, you know, they both talked about gratitude, too, like how important it is to cultivate a sense of gratitude for the present moment.
Greene was saying how getting stuck in the past or worrying about the future can actually prevent us from appreciating what we have right here, right now.
It's so true. It's like we're always rushing on to the next thing without stopping to savor the simple pleasures.
Exactly, like the warmth of the sun, the taste of your coffee, a good laugh, you know, those little things that we often take for granted.
It's about shifting your focus from what you don't have to what you do have, recognizing the abundance that already exists in your life.
And it ties back to that concept of a lifetime again. Are we truly present in our lives? Or are we just going through the motions?
That's a good question to ask ourselves regularly.
Yeah.
And, another thing that stood out to me was Greene's emphasis on finding your purpose.
Yeah, he was very clear that it's not something you just stumble upon. You have to actively search for it, question your beliefs, experiment with different paths.
Until you find something that really lights you up inside.
Exactly. And he talked about his own journey of discovering his passion for writing, how it took him years of exploration and experimentation to find his voice.
And he made it clear that it's not always easy. There will be challenges, setbacks, moments of doubt.
But he was really encouraging.
Yeah.
His message was basically trust the process, keep exploring, and never give up on the search for what makes you feel truly alive.
It's like, it's okay to not have all the answers, to feel lost or uncertain at times. Just keep moving forward.
And he also talked about the importance of taking action, not waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect opportunity. Just dive in.
He even shared that story about how he used to give people advice, even when he was struggling and unknown.
It was through the act of sharing his ideas that he started to find his voice in his audience.
It's a great lesson, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to start walking off. Trust your intuition and be open to the unexpected detours and discoveries along the way.
Exactly. And it's like everything we've been talking about really boils down to this: embracing the journey, trusting the process, finding the courage to keep moving forward even when things are uncertain.
And finding those sources of support and guidance along the way, whether it's through books, mentors, or even just connecting with like-minded people.
It's knowing that you don't have to do it alone,
Mm-hmm.
that there's a whole community of people out there who are on a similar journey.
People who are seeking to live more meaningful and fulfilling lives.
And one final thought that I really loved was Greene's advice to cultivate a sense of humor.
Oh, yeah. To not take yourself too seriously. He even talked about how much he loves silly jokes and bathroom humor.
It's like a reminder to lighten up a little bit, not to get so bogged down in the seriousness of life.
Especially in today's world, where we're constantly bombarded with bad news and negativity. Laughter is such a powerful antidote.
Totally. It's about finding joy in the simple things, connecting with our inner child, and not being afraid to laugh at ourselves.
So where do we even begin after all this? Greene and Shetty gave us so much to think about.
Yeah, it can feel overwhelming. I think the key is to just pick one thing that really resonated with you, something you can realistically incorporate into your life.
Maybe it's spending 5 minutes each day in quiet reflection, or picking up a book on a topic you've always been curious about.
Or reaching out to someone you admire and asking for advice, or committing to a small act of creativity each day.
It's about taking action, making a small step forward on your journey of self-discovery.
Exactly. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. So be patient with yourself, embrace the process, and never stop exploring.
That's great advice. Thanks for diving deep with me today.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure.